Hello, everyone. This is Brad Schmidt from Applanix, and we're really happy that you could join us today for our third in our webinar series on turning your UAV into a professional mapping solution. Today, we're going to talk about everything you need to know about Applanix Direct Georeferencing as a service, something that we started offering last year in a big way, and I just wanted to introduce this technology to you over the course of this webinar. Joining me on the webinar is now Shlada. He's going to be basically handling our questions. So there is a Q&A box that you'll see on your screen. Hopefully you're all connected in fine. You can see that Q&A box. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we'll queue those questions up and we'll get some answers to you regarding your questions. So just a few other things. I'm also joined by Sarah on the line. She's going to basically help us with the poll. And if you have any questions about connectivity or whatever, we've got a team on board here that can help you get connected if there's any issues with your video or your audio. So this particular presentation will be about, about 30 minutes today. It's a little bit longer than our normal presentations in this webinar series. We try to keep them to about 30 minutes so as to not consume too much of your time. This one will be a little bit longer today. We will be recording it. We are recording the webinar, so you'll be able to get access to that. We'll send out that link to you in a few days once we get everything sorted out in terms of posting the webinar and getting all the questions answered. So if there are questions that we don't get to at the end of the presentation, we will follow up with answers for those questions after the webinar. Everyone is on mute, and I think on that note, I'm just going to move forward. So as I say, this is the third in our webinar series. If you haven't seen the first two, I would encourage you to visit our webinar center and take a look at these webinars. They're all designed to reinforce topics around turning your UAV into a professional mapping solution. Our first webinar was on what is direct georeferencing and why use it for survey and mapping projects. And then in our webinar number 2, we took a deep dive into GNSS corrections or augmentation solutions for survey and mapping. So I do encourage you to take a look at those other webinars if you haven't had a chance to tune in for those. Okay, so our agenda today, well, first of all, take a look at very quickly who we are and what Applanix does for those who may be joining us for the first time. We'll take a look at what direct georeferencing is and what direct georeferencing is as a service, and then what's included in that service. And then we'll do a wrap up at the end with a Q&A segment. So Applanix is a Trimble company, and we're basically a world leader in the provision of GNSS integrated INS solutions, and specifically for the UAV survey and mapping industry, although our company basically provides positioning solutions for different domains such as marine, land, airborne, etc. So we cover that off, but today we're specifically focusing in on UAV surveying and mapping. Okay, so just a little bit about Applanix. We were formed in 1991. We were acquired by Trimble in 2003, which is a great marriage because it basically brought together Trimble's world-leading GNSS technology with the inertial technology that Applanix was working on. So integrating these two technologies to build a direct georeferencing solution has been very advantageous. And certainly we've proven that technology out over our many years of deploying this technology in the manned industry. And now we've kind of refactored that technology for the UAV industry. So very well proven technology. But let's get to today's topic. So we're looking at basically a subscription program or renting the technology. The question we have on our poll today is, would you consider renting or subscribing to a complete UAV survey and mapping system or sensor payload? So basically, the question kind of focuses is on subscription services as opposed to buying perpetual license. So we'll let everybody kind of take a second and weigh in on this, and then I'll ask Sarah to read our poll results. So you can choose yes, you'd be interested in subscribing to such a service, or no, or maybe?
All right, I can throw up the answers up on screen.
Okay, that'd be great.
So we've got 19% voted for yes, 19% also voted for no, and 62% voted for maybe.
Interesting. Okay. So that's kind of exactly what I suspected. A lot of people are maybe interested in learning about the subscription services and what is offered. So let's go through that and take a look at why you might want to actually subscribe to such a service. So my first slide here is on just a review on what is direct georeferencing. I really think it's important to just highlight this. Direct georeferencing is all about making sure that your pixel data or your LiDAR point clouds are accurate and precise. So accurate in terms of getting those, getting that data into its correct positional location, and precision with respect to making sure that all of those data points line up properly where they should be. So what we're after is accuracy and precision with direct georeferencing. And the way we do that is we use a GNSS to capture positioning data on the UAV platform, integrated with an INS or an IMU, which basically captures the orientation data of that UAV platform. We also have a correction system, an augmentation solution that we use to correct the data, i.e. take that data from the meter level down to a couple of centimeters on the ground. And if we basically calibrated our sensors correctly and calculated and measured our lever arms, then we can use mathematics to basically place the points, the LiDAR points, or the pixels on the ground exactly where they should be without the need for ground control points, which kind of brings me to my next slide here. So this is how direct georeferencing compares to a couple of common methodologies currently used in the UAV industry, namely aerial triangulation or PPK or RTK and direct georeferencing. So just let's have a quick look at this. So aerial triangulation basically requires quite a number of ground control points that need to be laid out in the area, the project area that you're going to be flying. And then basically you take those ground control points and match them up with corresponding points in your imagery to basically tie it down. Nothing the matter with this particular system. It works very well. It's been working for many, many years, decades actually. And if you have enough ground control points, you can get very accurate imagery. So the issue there, though, is that you need to basically lay out those ground control points in areas where you have no control already existing with the aerial triangulation method. And you also need to fly typically about 80% overlap, as is illustrated in the slide here. Now, if we kind of move up here or take a look at enhancements in the industry, we've now then added GNSS into the overall equation, a positioning solution. And that allows us to basically reduce the number of ground control points used here. We still need to fly the 80 by 80 overlap, but this kind of provides a cost savings and a more efficient system over aerial triangulation. And then if we take a look at direct georeferencing, there's a couple of key advantages we achieve with direct georeferencing. One is that we can eliminate the need for ground control points. And we can actually reduce the overlap that is flowing. So typically we can reduce that overlap by half. And what this allows us to do is either fly twice the area that we would typically fly with the other two methods, or fly the same area within half the amount of time. Or if you want to take a look at it this way, you can actually cover more area, essentially extend your battery life by using direct georeferencing, because now you can cover twice the area that you would otherwise be able to cover with the other two methods. So that's really what the value of direct georeferencing is. Now we do often have use our correction system to calculate a ground control point for us so that we can check the results of our direct georeferencing solution. So we usually have one point that we use as a checkpoint. So that's the differences between AT, RTK, PPK, and direct georeferencing. Now, what is direct georeferencing as a service? So instead of buying perpetual licenses, we basically offer the hardware as a service. So that is basically, instead of paying for the basically the license to use that technology, you're basically paying much less for a service. That's combined with a cloud service, in this case, POSPAC UAV, and that equals our direct georeferencing as a service. So it's an additional model to the standard business model where you're basically buying software licenses and hardware components to add into your UAV platform. So, and some of the features of this program are, first of all, our subscription program is really directed towards OEM partners. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about how end users fit into this overall equation in a minute, but just bear with me while I take us through the OEM partner side of things. So our components are really directed towards those who are doing UAV manufacturing, sensor manufacturers, or UAV systems integrators. That's who we typically work with as our partners under our OEM program. So we provide them with our direct georeferencing as a service. We provide them with the hardware and with the software. The hardware is at a significantly reduced price, and the software is provided as a cloud service. And basically, we license this on a pay-per-use basis. So the processing and the licensing is all on a pay-per-use basis. And the APX UAV hardware is provided at a cost plus. So it's not at that at our typical component rate where you would buy the technology outright, but just on a cost plus. So there's some significant cost savings, and we're going to get into the benefits of this for end users later on. So this is typically the business model right here. So Applanix on the left provides component technologies to the UAV industry, typically to our UAV OEM partners. We provide a significant amount of technology. We do also work with end users as well, where we provide them technology if they have the capabilities to, or you have the capabilities to engineer the technology into your UAV platforms. And then our OEM partners provide that technology to the end user community. And then the end user community comes back to subscribe to that service with the company that is basically providing that to the market. So that's the overall business model here. Let's just take a quick look at our OEM program for those of you who are UAV manufacturers or sensor manufacturers or systems integrators. So our UAV program basically provides a number of benefits. It provides that hardware and software, and basically we do that under a OEM agreement, which provides some price breaks, et cetera, for volume purchases. We provide support to integrate the products into the UAV platforms. So we provide that, the engineering support. Our goal here is to make sure that every implementation of the technology is successful. And so our engineers get directly involved with making sure that we relay information such as how to and best practices and those type of things to our OEM partners. And we provide training. We have a support desk. We basically, we provide response and spares for in-field work, maintenance service for end users, et cetera. So there's quite a number of different benefits that we have for our OEM program. And basically as a OEM supplier, these are the capabilities, these are the benefits and the services that we provide to our partners. Now let's just dive a little bit more deeply into what direct georeferencing is as a service. So really it's made up of two key parts. One is the GNSS INS integrated board set. What you're seeing are a collection of boards here, and I'm going to go through in just a minute and describe which each of these boards does and what and when you would want to use these, as well as our POSPAC UAV cloud solution. So we provide the API to our OEM partners who basically embed this technology into their own cloud services and then create this overall services offering, whether it's for a sensor payload or for a complete UAV system. So let's take a look at the board set, then we'll take a look at the cloud service. So this is our workhorse board, something called our APX15 UAV Direct Georeferencing as a Service. It is an integrated GNSS INS board. Basically, it's licensed on a pay-per-use basis only. That's all controlled through firmware. And it also supports a unique ID for our OEM partners. This basically ties into the POSPAC software, which I'll talk about in a minute. So for example, if you have one of these boards, you're going to basically need to use that POSPAC cloud offering from the company providing that service. It's kind of tied in that way through the firmware on the board. The board itself weighs about 60 grams, and it does meet the size, weight, and power requirements for UAVs. And this particular board will serve most UAV applications out there. Now we have some variations of that. One of the variations is our Trimble APX15EI, which stands for External IMU. And what that is for is we put a second IMU on a gimbal platform. So if you're running a fixed wing, the APX15 is just fine for that. If you're flying with a gimbal, then the APX15EI would be the right board set for that particular configuration, with the main board going on the UAV platform and the second IMU going on the gimbal. So we're actually tracking and recording two sets of orientations, which then help to basically tie that imagery down more accurate than otherwise. As I say, we've got, if everything's measured in and you're basically recording all of this data, you can use mathematics and process that data through the software, through the POSPAC processing software, post-processing software, to basically accurately get your data directly georeferenced on the ground. Our third board set is something called the Trimble APX18. This is a little bit different. This is designed for station holding or for facade scanning or infrastructure and inspection, essentially where your UAV may be stationary in the air or moving very slowly. What we do is we have added a slot for a second antenna, which we can then link into that antenna, and we can constrain the heading and control the heading information much better. Because basically what happens is that when you're stationary, you're not really leveraging the value of your INS solution. So we offset that with the second antenna configuration, and that allows us to basically get accurate results from your infrastructure. If you didn't have that, you'd probably see some skewing at the edges of your, say, for example, a bridge or whatever. But with this configuration, we get a very, very accurate representation of that scanning target. And then at the top end of our configuration is something called our APX20. So in this case, what we're doing is we're using a very, very high-end IMU. Basically, this has come out of our manned airborne industry, and we combine that with the APX 15 board set. The GNSS is essentially similar as the other configurations, same as the other configurations, but the IMU is different. And what this allows us to do is fly higher and still get that same degree of accuracy. So let me give you an example of that. Maybe you're flying a transmission line and you want to fly a little bit higher, a little bit faster, but still have that centimeter survey grade accuracy on the ground with your data, then basically this would be the configuration for that. It would allow you to control those parameters better with this configuration. Okay, I did mention the Direct Georeferencing as a Service firmware license. So, and as I say, this is basically the hardware is tied to the processing solution. So you cannot process through other POSPAC products such as our desktop product or other vendor solutions. So the Direct Georeferencing as a Service is tied to that cloud processing capability, that POSPAC UAV cloud processing capability. So POSPAC UAV Cloud. So POSPAC has been around a long time. We have put a lot of effort into this into this particular product over decades. So it's a very robust product. And basically in this case, what it does with POSPAC Cloud, configured as a service, it basically tracks usage, it creates and manages end user accounts, and basically it allows you to process data, basically just the data that you need to have processed. So for example, if you're processing a data set through POSPAC Cloud through a subscription service and you need to reprocess that data, typically reprocessing the same data is not charged a second time. And it is a transaction-based processing model that we use here. So you can constrain your costs by basically just paying essentially for what you're processing, the data that you're processing. So that's really kind of geared more towards the OEM partner. If we kind of switch that around and take a look at the benefits from an end user perspective, there's quite a number of benefits for end users to consider. So one of the things it does is it offers organizations that are looking to get into the UAV survey and mapping market a chance to evaluate different systems and sensor payloads. So for example, instead of going out and buying that technology, if you can simply subscribe to it for 3 months, 6 months, or maybe a year, you could try that technology out and see if that actually supports your requirements and your target market. So what that really presents is a lower cost entry into the survey and mapping world with UAVs. It's a pay-as-you-go model, so it's less cash up front. And basically, it gives companies a great opportunity to investigate this technology and understand how it works and to take a look at different UAV platforms and sensor systems that you may want to use. It's there's a couple of other advantages here. One is that it's a scalable solution. So if you want to just add additional units, additional UAV systems or sensor payloads into your business model, it's simple to subscribe to those. And again, you're controlling costs substantially by basically using a subscription versus an outright purchase. And the other really big benefit is surge capacity. So say, for example, over the course of a year, you may be flying missions and your current inventory of UAVs is satisfactory to support those missions, but maybe in the summer or good weather periods, you have a surge in contracts. It would be really nice if you could go out and just to subscribe to that technology when you need it. And then after that surge is over, you can return that technology through the subscription model. And of course, it includes maintenance and upgrades while your system is under subscription licensing. So just a little bit about pricing. We don't actually set the pricing at Applanix. That's something that would be set by the OEM partners that actually provide this technology. But there are a couple of variables that we offer, mainly in the name of what type of augmentation system you're planning on using for your projects. So if you're using a single base station, you can simply basically use a single base station that we provide. But in any case, what you need to do is if you're using that single base, there's one price for that. That is your correction system. You can also use a CORS network. We offer something called Applanix Smart Base Post-Processing Virtual Reference Station. It uses CORS networks to basically perform that correction of the data for you. And so there's a price associated with that. And also Trimble has a global correction system called Trimble RTX. And that system is also available as part of the cloud processing solution. So there's a number of different augmentation solutions that you could use. If you're simply flying local area missions, a single base station is just fine. It does a great job for that. If you're flying things like corridors, et cetera, then maybe you want to take a look at something like the Applanix Smart Base or the Trimble RTX solution. So, and we do have a webinar on these systems where we actually do a deep dive into these augmentation systems and kind of describe where and when you might want to use them. That is in our seminar number 2, our second webinar in the series. Okay, so availability. If you're interested in looking further into this technology, there are a couple of our partners that have currently deployed direct georeferencing as a service. So I would direct you to Microdrones. It's available for Microdrones and also from GeoQ Group. So these are a couple of companies that have deployed this technology. As I say, it's fairly new, and I think you'll probably see more of the UAV technology in the industry being offered as a service. I think that's something that is growing in the market and may be worth having a look at. So just in summary here, before we get into our wrap up, this is basically what the system or how the system works. So you've got your augmentation solution, whether that's a physical base station or a virtual reference system. You've got your UAV with your Applanix UAV Direct Georeferencing as a service board on there. And you're basically processing that data through a cloud processing solution that is provided by the vendor that you subscribe to for the system. And the output for that is basically an external orientation file, an SBET file, or a LAS file for any kind of point cloud processing. These output files are standard files. You can take them into any number of third-party applications to generate your information products. So that's kind of how it all works and how it all comes together. So just a couple of important takeaways before we get into some questions regarding this. So one thing to remember is that direct georeferencing, from Applanix is available from some of our partners as a service, and that does provide you with a low-cost entry point into the survey and mapping technology with UAVs. It's the same technology whether you buy it as a perpetual license or you buy it or purchase it or consume it as a service. It's the same technology that's being used, so you have access to that same great direct georeferencing technology. And of course, it is tied to a cloud solution for the post-processing. And you only pay for what you use. It's a pay-per-use model. It's basically just what you're just paying for the data that you're processing. And on that note, I'm going to open it up to questions. If there's any questions out there that you would like to have answered, I'll try to answer them today. And if we don't have an answer or don't have time to answer any questions, then we'll basically follow up in our subsequent email circulation with that information. So on that note, now, do we have any questions today?
We don't have any questions, but I would like to, if you want to go over the typical customer for the DGaaS service, so that as a reminder.
Yeah, a typical customer. I think organizations that should be looking at this are organizations that may not be certain about certain types of technology. One of the things that I really feel for new companies trying to get into this area is that, say, for example, if you're doing LiDAR mapping, which is really popular these days in the survey and mapping industry, you have many, many different types of LiDAR systems out there and UAV platforms, and they all have different considerations that you need to make when you're using that technology because they're not created equal. Plus, on top of that, you have the automotive industry taking their LiDAR systems and pushing that into the UAV industry. So on that note, just as a means of kind of trying to understand the technologies that are out there, it's nice if there's subscription services out there where you can subscribe to the technology, try it out, investigate it without having that big initial cash outlay for your sensor payload, your UAV platform, et cetera, and all the things that go into that. So this is really where it's directed towards, or to those companies that need to have some sort of a surge capacity where they don't want to necessarily buy another platform that they may only use for 2 or 3 months out of the year, but they can actually subscribe to a service that allows them to scale their operations as is required, and then to basically descale those or return or unsubscribe to those services when they're no longer needed. Now, of course, there are discrete units of service time like 3 months or 6 months or a year or whatever. But anyways, it does certainly help with scaling.
Thanks, Brad.
Okay.
One question that's come up is, how can I enter the program as an OEM partner?
Yes, so if you're interested in becoming an OEM partner and accessing our service technology, we do have information on our website for that in terms of becoming an OEM partner. Or I would basically suggest sales@applanix.com. If you contact our sales department, we'll basically go through the process of becoming an OEM partner and subscribing to our component technology, and we'll take you through that. So there's 2 ways. So either go to our website for information on the program. There's some great information there in terms of features, benefits, et cetera, or you can simply contact our sales department and we'd be happy to kind of walk you through it and describe how the program works. Okay,
Thanks,
on that note then, we'll wrap things up. I certainly thank you for joining us today, and hopefully you've learned a little bit about what we're doing to augment business in the UAV segment by offering capabilities that can be subscribed to as a service. To get additional information on this, please go to our website, applanix.com. You'll find a lot of great information there. We do have a webinar center, and I kind of referred to that at the beginning of the presentation, with more webinars on our technology, from direct georeferencing to augmentation solutions and more. So I certainly encourage you to take a look at that webinar center. And if you have questions, and this often happens after you leave a presentation, you'll basically see that you have you come up with questions, you want to know more. How do you get that information? You can go to either sales@applanix.com and one of our team will get back to you with the information that you're looking for, or please feel free to contact me directly at bschmidt@applanix.com. Whoop, I spelled that wrong there on the slide, so I'll have to fix that. So applanix.com, and I'd certainly be happy to go over any of the technology with you and help you to understand what might be relevant to your particular situation. We also have a YouTube channel as well that has additional information on that. So that's how you can get additional information from us. And I certainly thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as I say, we'll be circulating a copy of the presentation so you can review it later on again if you want to look at some of the components of that. And so have a look for that. It'll be coming out in the next few days. So on that note, we're going to wrap up today's webinar. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again in the future for another Applanix UAV webinar broadcast. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.